This is Jordan Poyer, safety for the Buffalo Bills, and you are now listening to Cover One Buffalo Podcast. Let's go.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo Podcast. You are joining your normal host, Greg Thompson, along with the OG, Eric Turner. Eric, how are we doing?
What's going on, Greg? Happy to jump on here real quick.
Yeah. Just thought it was fun. A lot of fun stuff going on Twitter today. Thank you guys for everybody who's given feedback on the Dream Offseason article. Got some great feedback there. But we had an interesting tweet that came out here and wanted to kind of talk about it just because of the connections that we've seen. And, it came out from a source, Jenna Lane, who's the ESPN NFL Nation reporter down in the NFC South. She covers the Bucs, but it had a little bit of info on a former player for the Bills, Cordy Glenn, along with Trai Turner, and just talking about the guard market and two people that are being shopped around in NFL circles. Glenn, we already know about, probably going to get released if they can't find a home. And honestly, I will be surprised if they find a team that wants to take on that contract. But more interestingly, Trai Turner is a 26-year-old guard, one of the guys who was drafted while Bean was there and being coached while McDermott was there, has been to 5 straight Pro Bowls at right guard, and just a really interesting prospect. So somebody that, if we've been kicking around the idea, we're not sure if we want to pay the market it's going to take to get a Joe Thuney, and now information coming out that Brandon Scherf's going to get franchise tagged. Just thought it was interesting to want to get on and talk about it. And you had a couple interesting, clips that you came across on Twitter and some interesting PFF data for Turner. What are your thoughts on him, Eric?
No, I went back real quick, watched a few games on Turner because he's obviously a guy that, has been one of the better guards in the leagues the last couple of years. I know he's dealt with some injuries, and you'll talk about that later along with his contract. But, the guy's really played well when he's in the lineup. What I liked about the 3 games that I watched last year, when he was playing with Kyle Allen, you got to keep that in mind. And I'm going to bring up some of Pro Football Focus's stats because he gave up 6 sacks last year. Let's keep that in mind. He gave up 6 sacks, as you can see down here on the right, 4 QB hits, 20 QB hurries. So obviously he did give up some pressures overall, but he's playing with a guy like, Kyle Allen in that offense under North Turner. So some of that is going to fall on him because obviously those young quarterbacks are going to hold on to the ball for a good amount of time. But what I did like about him, I think primarily he's a run blocker, and he's kind of similar to Quentin Spain, whereas he is kind of a mauler. He's got that nastiness in the run game. But as you can see in some of those clips I posted on Greg's timeline, he's got a little nastiness in the passing game too. And I like his quickness and his explosiveness out of his stance laterally, which is something that Quentin Spain really struggled with last year when guys, came across his face real quick from a wide alignment. So I like that with him. I liked, obviously, in those clips, you'll see him. He clears passing lanes. He's got 34-inch arms, and he clears those passing lanes, which is something, obviously, when you look at the Bills' offensive line, that is something that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott and Brian Dable wanted to bring in. Guys that can not only stick the blocks, but clear passing lanes when they do try to stunt against Josh Allen, because Josh Allen and that offense are what? They're in empty a lot. And so when you hit 5-man protections, you got to have those big guys that can not only stick the blocks, but also clear guys in the passing lanes and clear them from the QB spot. So those were a few things I liked, taking a brief look at him real quick. But obviously, I'd like to dig in a little more. If they do sign him, obviously, I'm going to dig in a little more film. But overall, I like what he brings. And I honestly didn't realize 5 Pro Bowls, straight Pro Bowls, that's pretty amazing. And yes, I would love to have him on the offensive line, whether it's at either guard position, because that's one thing that the guys that are in the interior offensive line do, is that they have that versatility. So yes, I would love to add him. And so what are your numbers? What type of numbers are you projecting for him if he does get a new contract here soon?
Well, the interesting part is, and you touched on it here, some of the archetypes that the Bills go through before, although he's not the tallest guy, 34-inch arms, actually ran a crazy 4.9, so it was interesting. He earned a contract extension, so he had already something coming back from Carolina, and any team that acquires him would be taking on 2 more years. The initial one is at about $9 million because there is a roster bonus that we would owe him with an $8.5 million base salary. There's also some numbers that you'll see the following year, $11 million with another $5 million roster bonus. And I think that it's going to be, one way to be able to look at that is that I think he's going to want a little something. So I played around with some of the numbers. I think that you could do a 2-year extension with make it look like $26 million, but really it's a $10 million signing bonus up front. And then you would end up adding 2 more $8 million salary years onto the end of that. And what it ends up turning it into is a 4-year deal where he's making, 12 million, 14 million, 10 and a half, 10 and a half. So pretty palatable at the end. And you're only talking about age 27, 28, 29, and 30. Definitely very doable for a guard. And obviously a guy coming off 5 straight Pro Bowls is the kind of guy you invest in. And that $9.5 million, $10 million range is a bit more palatable than the 13 to 14 million you were hearing with Thuney, and probably the 15 to 16 million you were hearing with Brandon Scherf. And I think it's one of the rare areas where bringing in a guy like that really makes it a little more palatable to give another run at Cody Ford at right tackle. I know both of us have been kind of easing into that idea a little bit more in that maybe we need to brace ourselves for a move, even though we'd rather not see movement and let a guy hunker down. If you're going to do that, one of the ways to do that is to put a 26-year-old 5-time Pro Bowler next to him. And then you're going to be able to really see what is his upside and full capability. So if you're going to go that route, that's one where I'd be a little bit more open to it.
No, I definitely, and I know, as you said, we've been talking about, moving forward the guard. And, if they get a guy like this and put him next to Cody Ford, I'm open to, obviously keeping him out wide, because in the end, there's still versatility among that offensive line. It's funny you brought up, kind of comparisons and talking quickly about about Trai Turner's athletic profile. I looked up his, 5 comparable players based on their athletic profile on playerprofiler.com. Here are 2 of the names that came up: Shaq Mason, Joe Looney, and Brandon Scherf. So you see, those are the type of players that you mentioned, those kind of guys. So I do think he projects well in the Bills offense, at either guard position. Same with Feliciano. And having a guy that helps his adjacent offensive linemen so well, will definitely help Ford's game altogether. So he won't have to worry so much about that inside lane being open when he kick slides wide, because he's trying to overcompensate or overset versus those wide rushers. He knows he has help to his side. So having a guy like Turner is good. He's kind of like what I called Mitch Morse. He's that eraser, that sheriff inside that is very good with his help technique. If there's no one over him, or if that defensive lineman that disappears and rushes away from him, he immediately finds his next target and clears that passing lane, as I said. So I think, it could buy Ford a little more time at tackle. But in the end, I mean, for the value that you get in your guard, I understand it's going to be pretty pricey with all things considered and what they're spending on offensive line right now. It would be pricier bringing a guy like Turner in, but darn well that Brandon Beane's going to do everything in his power to upgrade that guard position, whether it's by sliding, Ford inside or getting a free agent off the street. It's going to happen. And I mean, we pretty much say it every day. We all do have a lot of good trust in Beane. So I do trust whether it's Turner or someone else, that he's going to bring in someone that's going to take that starting position.
And a good way to look at it is you now get a full season with a Pro Bowl presence next to him. And in the clips that are out there on the timeline show how fantastic Turner is at finding work and coming over to help and being that support system, like you said, that sheriff there to be able to do that. What a better way to be able to truly decide, hey, is this the long-term position for Ford? Because now you can make a fully informed decision. And at the end of 2020, John Feliciano and Ty Nsekhe's contracts come up. That's $10 million that comes off the cap. All of a sudden, now we had a full season to say, hey, we put a Pro Bowl guy next to him. He just is not going to be able to deal with that speed, but we think he can play guard. All of a sudden, you let Feliciano walk. You have the $10 million that freed up there. You can go shopping for that right tackle next to Turner, or if we filled a bunch of holes here, or depending on where the draft pick comes from this year, you may have that investment to be able to stick another guy in there at right tackle, or maybe that's our premium day one pick next year that you're able to plug that in, because now you have a full season. You've now taken 2 years to give him a run at tackle. You put a Pro Bowl guy next to him. You know for sure what those options are, and now you can make an informed decision that, hey, we're not guessing here. We didn't pull the plug too soon. We feel like we still have talent and value here, but we need to kick it into guard, and we found out for the full season. Or your best case scenario, hey, solidifying that presence next to him, he is our long-term answer at right tackle. So I think there's some domino effects of his value.
And here's a question for you. having a guy like with his name and obviously his quality of play over the years on the trade market, or eventually maybe even on the free agent market, how does that affect a guy like Quentin Spain and the other guards that are there? Because obviously, one of the guys that we talk to behind the scenes that covers the Panthers is Billy M on Twitter, and he's a really good film guy for them. And I asked him, what he thinks the value trade wise for Turner is, and he was thinking day 3. And so me and you are like, wow, I would do a day 3 pick for him immediately. So how do you think that affects the free agent market when they're trading, they're throwing his name out there in the trade market or even in free agency?
So it's going to be an interesting balance. So before seeing that, I had thrown out there that I thought it was one of those higher value but trade down scenarios. So I threw out Buffalo's 2nd for Carolina's 3rd and Trai Turner. So which in reality kind of gives, the team there in Carolina, they get to wave the flag that, hey, look, we got a 2nd rounder for Trai Turner, when in reality, Bean just dropped down 15 spots from 54 to 69.
Like a Cordy Glenn type move.
Exact same one.
I like that.
Now, I think that's not that far off really of what it would take. If someone tried to do that trade of going from 69 to 54, you'd probably be trading a 4th or a 5th and a 6th to be able to do that kind of move. So it's about the same value wise from that standpoint, but it looks better to Matt Rule and for them to wave to their fans. And then I think what it does is it shows that value of anybody getting north of $8, $9, $10 million isn't going to have a ton of, play in the marketplace, because you're not getting a premium there to already be paying that. So, I think it's going to be interesting to see where it comes, but I think that it shows that there's some value overall, and it's worth kicking the tires on this. One final point that came up from some guys on Twitter were, the Carolina connection. And I'll say this is the perfect scenario where I think we're about at the end of that run. Yeah. These are the last guys that were drafted by Bean. It's the last guys who were coached by McDermott, and they just cleaned house with all the coaches that are there. So we have one last stretch here of any insider information or additional knowledge on people from Carolina. And then that's pretty much going to be gone because the staff is gone, and anyone who's picked after this were picked after Bean left. So this is the last chance for them to leverage any inside information. And a guy that they drafted who then immediately went to 5 straight Pro Bowls afterwards is probably one that's worth kicking the tires on.
Yeah, it's definitely working in their favor. I know a lot of people use it as a negative. Well, why aren't we using it as a positive now? Because obviously they know this guy really well through the draft and all the background research they did when he was coming out. So, you know what? At this moment, the fact that we're just hearing about these trade rumors, that their names being floated, I guarantee that Bean in his front office already spoke with the personnel and representatives, because that's what happens in Indy. That's why these are all legit things that happen behind the scenes, and because everyone's in one spot, everyone's getting dinner and drinks afterwards after a long day, and they're floating these type of things out there. So it's a believable story, and it's a credible. It's really someone they should kick the tires on, because it's a position they could definitely upgrade.
So appreciate you guys jumping on here real quick. Eric and I just thought this was worthwhile to be able to do a quick emergency pod here to share all the information with you guys. Take a look at the timeline, all the information we have out there. I shared some stuff on the contract extension, on the trade compensation. Got some video clips that Eric fed over as well. So take a look at everything we have going on. Eric, anything else for the people?
No, it's good. Good to be back and talking some football, man. I wanted to take a little break from watching all the college film, because sometimes that gets boring. It's nice to reset your eye when you're looking towards, possible guards or even tackles that they're, maybe looking at in free agency or in the draft. So it's kind of nice to have a little news like this pop up and have me jump back into the all 22 of the NFL rather than just college, which I've been obviously in the film room for a while now, the last few weeks. So it's nice to kind of reset that eye and take a look at a good guard, because he's worthy of kicking the tires on.
Absolutely. So speaking of that, make sure you guys are checking out the work from Eric, from Russell, from Christian, from Zach, from Brad, everybody that's out there. Take a look at all the stuff they have going. We'll keep you guys fed with good information all the way up through free agency and the draft. Keep a lookout for upcoming shows. We'll kind of keep giving you guys good info. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.